What's up, everyone? DJ Nubis here with you on the Meltdown Radio podcast with another episode of Kaiju Spotlight. Here with my good friend and co-host today, Jedi Velle. Thank you, sir, for being here.
Not a problem, brother. Happy to be here.
And this time around, we are going to be talking about one half of the War of the Gargantuas, this being Gaira, the more dark brother. No pun intended.
That's kind of weird. I hadn't even thought about that. It's like, yeah, he's the dark half. Like, yeah.
But so Gaira is basically what's considered like a sea Frankenstein. He's a Frankenstein creature that's actually created out of nature based off his brother. Yeah. I forget the brother's name offhand. Sanda. But he was more of like raised by some scientists and was very friendly. And then if you ever seen War of the Gargantuas, he represents the good side, and of course, Gaira is a little bit more the more evil, dark side. And in fact, it's funny about Gargantuas because you see a little bit in the intro there, and if you ever seen the movie, he actually eats people. Like, it's not very pleasant. He actually really likes it. Aside from the clothes, he'll pull out like toothpicks, and he's like, it's like sunflower seeds. Yeah, I don't want that. I don't want to eat that.
Right.
But as always, like, I want to kind of get your thoughts on the first time you saw War of the Gargantuas and what you initially thought of the movie itself.
Oh, dude, I mean, now that I think about it, it's been the first time I saw it was like early 90s, and the way I look at it, it's kind of weird because thinking back to it, you know, I was, like I said, heavily into Godzilla and everything, and didn't realize it was done by the same people as Godzilla, Ashiro Honda and everything. But when I first saw it, I was kind of like, this is a very strange bag of these two, and then you have a Caucasian in there, playing among, the Japanese actors and actresses. I was like, this is weird, this is kind of weird. But at the same time, it was unique, but I think it was ahead of its time for me because I didn't understand. Because when I first saw it, I only saw like maybe, I could say maybe like, I say like 10 or 15 minutes of it because I didn't really see the whole of it because it's like, okay, this is too much for me. I feel like it was like too much of I mean, it's something good. I mean, because it's something different, but at the same time, it just felt like, oh man, this is like really over the top. But as time progressed, when I finally did watch it later on, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I see what they was talking about. Then, and this is before I saw Frankenstein Conquers the World, and when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, these are tying in films, and this is just what you call experimental, in a sense, movies that they were doing, but they were very entertaining. And I said, I didn't get it at the time, but when when I did eventually see it later on in life, I was like, wow, these films are actually pretty good. I mean, I didn't realize how much there is there. If you're kind of the kind of person who's kind of philosophical like me, you can see things in a different light than other people would.
Hmm. Yeah. So obviously, following Frankenstein versus Baragon, Toho began work on a direct sequel, which I guess somehow this kind of plays into that in some way. I guess maybe just because of the creation of the creatures themselves. But Ishiro Honda again behind the camera for this. Uh, I found this interesting too. That Gaira himself is kind of based a little bit off of the Gill Man from Creature of the Black Lagoon, which is
Yes.
pretty interesting. So we do see in the movie that, like, he lives water based. He's pretty much in the water all the time and stays out of the light. Whenever light, the sun or even just artificial light comes, he's like a vampire and does not like it. Runs away from it.
Right.
Uh, Whereas Sanda, he can be out in the elements, and it doesn't matter if it's light or dark. He's just not having a problem with that, like Gaira is. For what I understand too, like the way they shot War of the Gargantua was it using the green screen and stuff like that. That's something they would use later on with King Kong and King Kong Escapes, like the more modern versions of that stuff.
Right.
So that's kind of cool too that they were borrowing from that. Um, why is it though? Do you think that when it comes to when most people talk about the kaiju stuff, that we don't really bring up these guys that much? Why do you think that is?
Well, it's simple and plain. It's because even I had this kind of thought process, when I was younger, is that they don't seem like they fit the narrative as kaiju. I mean, even though they are, I mean, they're big, they're monstrous, they're destructive, but the thing about them is that they don't have too much special powers. That they can't fly. I mean, they can swim. I
Hmm.
mean, do all these other things. But you know, like Godzilla, they don't have atomic breath. Like Rodan, they can't fly like 100 miles, 1,000 miles an hour. Um, it's like, I mean, and they are strange and unusual individuals. They are, but aside from that, it's kind of like with Frankenstein. When Frankenstein comes to the world, not a lot of people talk about that. They don't talk about these films. Now, in retrospect, this little side note: Quentin Tarantino loves War of the Gargantuas. He's a big fan of that film, of this film. In fact, if you watch, was it the first or second Kill Bill series, he actually has Daryl Hannah's character say Gargantua a couple of times, in which she says, "I like that word Gargantua," in a word in what she's saying. And it turns out that he just is a big fan of this film. He just loves these films. He loves anything, retro, whatever, But
Yeah,
I
right.
feel that the film, the characters themselves, they're not as I say, they're not fitting the narrative of what you call consider or what you consider kaiju. In sense, it's true enough that they're destructive, they're powerful. And I guess that's why they don't fit the narrative as much, because I mean, people do talk about them more now, but back then, and especially when I was in my 30s, they really didn't talk about him. Especially when I first saw this, they never talk about him. I mean, I had to find this out by accident about this film. I didn't know nothing about this film,
Yeah.
but I think it's just that they, and I said before, I think they were ahead of their time on what they were. And so knowing that, even though they're furry, they're hairy and everything, I guess with some kaiju's, you think of like scales or shell plating, kind of like a Geras, with Rodan, or even with Gajira, they have these kind of scales about them. They have a certain skin texture that doesn't kind of comprehend with theirs. Theirs are more kind of like more lived in kind of sense. Because like I
Mm-hmm.
say, I think that's the thing right there. they kind of represent more human aspects of in this world than they do, regular kaiju, because those kaiju's, they don't have as much, hair, or to say they don't represent human beings as much, even though Godzilla is supposed to be a representation in a way of human society, the way they do things, like they use destructive power, like with the nuclear power and everything. So I feel that, I think that's just a narrative. I think it's just a metaphor that they kind of represent human beings, but not in the way that previous kaijus do. I think it's just like I say, because even in the movie, if you've seen the American cut or international cut of this film, there's a moment where the characters say, if they're brothers, why are they fighting one another, And one of the head scientists said, there's a statement in the Bible where Cain versus his brother Abel, and it's kind of that metaphor that they're brothers, although they're not. They seem to have, one is possibly good, the other one is bad, and it's just that kind of metaphor saying that that's what they're representing, human society, in a sense of what is their mentality. It is, and we see in this film that their mentality is like, just like that. They act like brothers, but it's like one is like, I'm taking the initiative to do this, and the other one is taking the initiative to do that. And they choose, and they have the choice to be either good or bad. And that's the kind of funny thing.
But I think also it's it's almost like the how you were raised type thing. So one of the things that I read about is like, Sanda was raised by loving humans. They like played with him, they talked, they fed him, they had a good time with him as a youngster. Whereas when Gaira was, created, he was alone. He was in the waters and the monsters around him that were of the deep. He was constantly fighting with them or whatever. So he didn't have that same upbringing that Sanda did. I thought it was interesting. I haven't got to read my Rulers of Earth yet books, but apparently Godzilla faces Gaira at one point. Apparently, I guess at some point, somebody of the characters in the books stated that they played the roar of Godzilla for a joke, and the girl was telling him that's not a good idea. Gaira does not like Godzilla, so let's not do that. But apparently, there was a point in that series that Gaira became kind of good. Like he chilled out a little bit, maybe because of Sanda's influence, and became more of an Earth defender, but still has like issues with humans, for whatever reason.
Kind of the same with Godzilla. He still has his ups and downs with human beings.
Yeah,
makes sense. But you bring up a good point. That was something I was thinking about, is that you are only a product of your environment in terms of how you came through and how you were raised and whatever. But I also say that with that, as I said before, you have a choice to depend on if you want to go that route of, even though you've been struck with extremely bad luck or bad tidings with certain things, you can choose to be whatever you want to. But as we see, one chooses to do this and the other one chooses to do that. But yeah, I mean, it's how, and I guess that's just it. Love and hate come into play, and I guess knowing how these two individuals react to one another, they're pretty much doing that. They're showing the yin and the yang of one another. In a way about that.
Yeah, I was reading. Apparently, Gaira has appeared in something called Go Godmen.
Yeah, I heard about
Tokusatsu thing, which I know nothing about, but
I don't either. Yeah.
But I find that very interesting, that he's appeared in stuff like that. So here's the other thing too, though. We've talked about this before with some of the other kaiju that aren't as well talked about, but outside of like smaller appearances, we'd never seen another film about these two brothers or even Gaira. Like, why is it we because I think War of the Gargantuas does have like a huge cult following, at least within the kaiju community. So like, I often wonder like why we haven't seen any more from them.
That's the question, I mean, because I mean,
Because it's so interesting too about like Rodan we've talked about as one
yeah,
movie, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, why aren't we doing more with these creatures? You know?
right. I mean, because they're very, as I say, they're very unique. I mean, like I say, we have yet to see, Titanosaurus in anything new. I haven't seen nothing like
Yeah,
it in anything. We have not seen anything again with, like say, Biolante in anything. I mean, maybe in written form, but not in movie form or anything like that. And we definitely haven't seen anything. Well, let me take that back. We have seen something with Megalon. We have is in a short version film, so
yeah.
I can't say that. I'm talking about in terms of we have not seen anything modern with them in there with anything, and I think, like say, Frankenstein definitely hadn't seen him in anything since then, and various other creatures. I'm trying to think that have been modernized that I've not seen them in, and I think those are the basic ones. Because Titanosaurus has definitely not been, and like I say, Sanda and Gaira, they have never been in anything modern today. I mean, they've been in printed form. Some
Yeah,
like Matt
right.
Frank have contributed, put them in story form, and everything. So I don't know. I mean, it's funny how they have this incredible effect on the human populace among the kaiju fans, but they haven't been upgraded to modern day anything as far as a short film or a film in general. And it's just like you think they would take the opportunity to kind of bring them to the forefront for newer, you know, kind of kaiju fans, the ones, the younger ones. So I don't know. It's a mystery, but then again, I realize like anything, maybe there's nothing there to really put them into the spotlight
Right.
nowadays. And I mean, that's kind of sad, because you would want to see them upgrade. Because like I say, when we talked about Jet Jaguar, I would love to see him upgraded in something, more mecha or whatever, update, but
Well, it's funny you bring that up because apparently with the Go Godman movies or shows or whatever they were, Guy was able to actually transform from a kaiju to a human form.
hmm,
And so, like, if you imagine, like, because Jet Jaguar can do the same, he can change his size. So that would be kind of a cool matchup. I think the problem with like America doing is like with Legendary, because we have so much King Kong stuff already, it's too much samey. So with these two creatures, they look too much like Kong in some ways. So it would probably have to be something that Toho did if they wanted to bring Gaira and Sanda back in some weird way. But if they did, like having Gaira face off against Jet Jaguar would be a fun movie to watch, because they can both change
it's
size and whatnot.
but that's kind of interesting. That's an interesting take on that. Is like if they were to do something like that, bring them into Legendary Monsterverse, some kind of way, because it would be kind of weird, but at the same time kind of unique. Because as you said before, we've got enough of a King Kong basis, a storyline. We got that. We know that, and I guess because it's American, but
Yeah.
it would be nice if they could incorporate that. I mean, it's going to cost a little money, but I was saying, make the sacrifice. I mean, you never know. This might actually work to your favor. But it's like you see, Kaiju fans of old and new see something like Gaira, in here. It's like, oh my god, oh shit, he's in here. It's like, what the fuck, it's like that would be so incredible. But again, this is where a is he going to be structurally sound to be in there, or B, is it even worth putting him in there? And it's just like
Well,
it's so
that's the funny thing because obviously money always plays a factor, especially with Legendary, because they have to buy the rights to use the likenesses and all this. But when we think about the past, we think about like Destroy All Monsters or Final Wars. Half of the fun of that is seeing all these kaiju that we grew up with on film together. Like that's sort of the appeal about it all. So like when we watched King of the Monsters, we didn't get to see Anguirus per se, but we did see the remains. We knew exactly what it was. But but everybody's like, man, it would have been nice to see Angarius in this film, like that's the thing. And so if Legendary did that again, they would have to buy the rights to a lot of these creatures and just do like another destroy all monsters type thing where we have them all together. But the cost is so much that it's just probably impossible to happen. But it'd be nice to see because, like you said, we could be going and saying, "Oh yeah, there's Angarius, there's Gorosaurus," and then all of a sudden we see Gaira, who we're not even really thinking about, and it's like, "Oh shit, they even went after Gaira. That's great." Or if you're Daniel Miller, it's Varan. Holy fuck,
Yes.
Varan! you know. So I think part of it is like, yeah, as kaiju fans, we really would like to see some of these monsters just show up, even if it's just for
A
a
cameo.
cameo. Yeah. Just have fun with it and show us like, okay, well, since all the titans of the earth is pretty much rebuilding itself after GXK empire, but now like they're on their own island. They've kind of isolated themselves away from the human population until they need to come do anything. Either they go back in the ground or whatever, but then you can kind of see these cameos and say, oh, look, it's Gaira or it's Varan or it's this monster and that monster. So you can kind of have fun with it, but again, cost. It's always about the cost.
Well, to me, I mean, I'll make this quick. I feel that's the problem with Hollywood anyway. It's like you got great ideas, but you don't want to spend the money to make these dreams come to reality. It's kind of like, dude, I mean, you got a real strong fan base right there. True enough, there's a lot of people who don't know these creatures at all. They are like totally ignorant to what we know. Okay, we know these things back and forth. Take the chance, spend that money, and you might be surprised how many people will be like, "You got him in here, you got her in there, you got it's." And look, and I've said this before many times, but I know this probably will never happen. But then it's never say never. If you got Gamera into the mix, into this universe, see how much it would explode, because it would be like, okay, your mind is going in total fuck mode. It's like, fuck me, knowing that you went to the distance of paying the money to get there. And you would see, like I say, you would see so many people joygasm so quickly, seeing creatures like him on the screen with Godzilla in the same mix. And it's just like, wow. I mean, that shows right there. They're thinking about the audience. They're thinking about the fans. And they're not going to tread on, light waters to get it there, But again, like I say, I mean, as someone said before, this will probably never happen because there's so many issues, trademark, all that stuff. And I'm just like, well, then I guess that shows right there you don't really care about what can be produced in terms of really bringing this to light, for new generations. So, but yeah.
The greatest mistake that they made for Legendary was you had success with 2014. There was people complained a little bit, but for the most part, that movie destroyed. It did well.
Yeah.
And it was a serious tone. So it had like, a good plot device about the, atomic bomb, et cetera, et cetera. And then, they said, okay, we're going to do King of the Monsters and like, we're going to bring in all these other creatures and make it a fan favorite. Like we wanted to up the excitement with the monsters, but then the story fell apart. And that's the thing that I think really hurt Legendary for the most part. They're doing fine. It's okay because they're still giving us kind of the stuff that we want. But if they were smart about it, they would have approached it kind of like what they did with -1. -1 gives you Godzilla, but it gives you Godzilla as like a secondary thing. We give you the human plot that's very good. It's a great story, great acting, great execution. If they had done this throughout the entire Monsterverse, I think you're not just bringing in the fans who love these creatures, but you're bringing in fans who aren't even kaiju fans. Like I see every day, dude. Today I've seen like 2 or 3 reaction videos from people who don't really know much about Godzilla, but they love -1 because of the story. They all get emotional. They all get involved with it. They're impressed by Godzilla, like the power that he has. But they couldn't tell you like who King Ghidorah is or anything like the way that we talk. So I think Legendary kind of missed the boat when they decided that they they've kind of been all over the place in terms of like how they want the movies to feel. That's why like Monarch is taking more of a serious approach again. Whereas, the last two Godzilla films and Kong films are more just fun and just throwing shit up in the fan and saying, hey, just enjoy the monster crashing, right? And that's fine, but you're not bringing in anybody else that really gives a shit too much about the monsters. Like they're kind of like, they come in and are like, why am I watching this? I don't care about the monsters. Like these people are pointless. Why am I watching this?
Yeah, I mean, bring in the emotion, bring in that heart that has, like what you said, -1. It
Yeah.
was such a good balance of the kaiju action, but also the humanistic approach, and that's the thing. The original Gojira did this, it really did that well in
Mm-hmm.
showing the human balance, but also showing the kaiju action. And I think that's
Whoa.
sorry, that was okay. All right.
You got ghosts? You got ghosts over
Maybe.
there?
I'm not sure, but the haunting of my mom or something like that. Yeah, but anyway, no, getting back to what I was saying,
Oh.
what's up?
Oh, there you go. You get back. Just
Oh, okay.
froze up for a minute. You're good.
Oh, I was gonna say, what's going on? But you know what I'm talking about in terms of Hollywood is such a rush to make things and make money. I mean, because that's all it is. It's just a money making factory.
Yeah.
But they lose sight of certain things when it comes to telling stories.
Yep.
You have a good story when you have good, strong characters and
Yep.
how the narrative plays out. As I say, you can do that with the MonsterVerse, but it's like if y'all such a rush to make these, just make these films and just to get money out of it, I think you're missing the plot of why you make movies in the first damn place. I mean, you do have diamonds in the rough ever so often that play on those symbolisms. Unfortunately, the so-called, dumb and stupid thing is the only thing that they feel like that's the best way they can make money. No, you can actually make good stories like we were talking about. We mentioned Jaws before. It's dealing with a shark, but there's so much more to that film than just that, And you got to think to yourself, try to put that narrative together, and you'd be surprised how many people will relate to it and realize that that's what it's all about. It's all about relation, how you relate to these things and how you feel about them, So, and I feel that that's what gets lost sometimes with some of these movies, and that's why I like knowing that you have that balance of you have great action, great, whatever going on, but you have great storytelling with characters that kind of help you bring you in. And I think you need that in order to, make a movie work well, and then you will get money coming in, but unfortunately, people have lost touch with that. I mean, E.T. did it, Raiders of the
Mhm.
Lost did it, past films like these really say, bring in, people with the story with strong characters and then see how they react to it. But unfortunately, if they want to do it, they can, but I don't know. Maybe they've kind of missed the boat, or maybe it's just like, let's just let it sit.
Yeah, they definitely missed a boat. I mean, look at John Wick. The same director is handling that. He handled Ballerina. So you have the same guy who cares about the franchise. He cares about the storytelling. He cares about the action. He ties it all together, and he's doing a good job. Like it'll be interesting to see what he does with the Donnie Yen film, but it's probably going to be good. If I'm betting it's going to be good. Uh, with the MonsterVerse, you have like Doherty and Wingard who love Godzilla, like they're fans of the films. But the reality is, I don't think the dedication is near as good as it is, say, for Chad Stahelski or even Yamazaki from -1, who's
Right.
working on his sequel. They care about that franchise. Like if I was a guy that like if I was Edwards and I had done 2014, I probably would have been adamant that like, look, I do this film. If you're going to do sequels, I wanted to be the guy to do it. Like I want it to be a continuation of what I'm doing.
Be in control.
Because I want to be able to speak to the Walter Rosses of the world, and then also speak to people who don't know about the kaiju world. I want them to come in and say, Yeah, you know, I'm not really into the monsters too much, but man, your storytelling is amazing. I love what the characters do, how they intertwine with the monsters. That's what I care about. And see, that's where the bus was missed. You know, Doherty gave us King of the Monsters, which people are going to look at me strange, but it's my favorite Godzilla film because of just different reasons. Yeah, but I could sit here and tell you that Minus One is the best written Godzilla film and executed in any film in the world. It's the best one.
I,
I've never been into a Godzilla film where I've been that emotional ever. Like it's so good.
same with me.
Yeah. But that's that's the thing. Like I think that if Gaira was going to be introduced, it's like at this stage because of the way that MonsterVerse works, it's more going to be more of just just for us kaiju fans. Like the people outside just won't know who they are. They won't care. But for us, we're going to get giddy if we actually see them at any point. You know.
Yeah, we're gonna get like little schoolboys a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. It's all the childhood back over again, and we really want to kind of just have these little cameos and little small fights or whatever. But it's probably going to work more if Toho like reboots it in some way or brings them in another capacity. Because I'm curious what Yamazaki's going to do with this sequel. Like we know there's going to be a villain outside of Godzilla probably in it. So who's that going to be? Like I'm very curious how they're going to do that.
Which is why I say it's always good to just speculate, but don't think that it's going to be, because everyone's saying it's going to be Space Godzilla, but it's like we don't really know. We have no idea.
Yeah. Even for the next one for Monsters, like could be Space Godzilla, and that's fine. It'll be interesting to see the design they come up with, but until it happens, we don't really know. But I've had Big Bad Wolf tell me that he's heard some information. I'm like, just save it. I don't want to hear it.
I was going to say,
yeah. So I'm just like, the only one I actually really cared about in terms of having any kind of idea what was going to happen was Godzilla versus Kong, like that, because I didn't want them to make the same mistake they made in '63. So, I didn't believe that one at all back then. I don't believe it now. So I didn't want to go down that road again. So they at least made the 2021 movie believable in terms of how Kong could compete with Godzilla, but that Godzilla really ultimately is the king of the monsters. Yeah. All right. Well, what would you want to see? Would you like to see a reboot of the War of the Gargantuas?
I wouldn't mind. I mean, if they take good care, especially with the like with the director of -1, if he was to get his hands on it, I mean, I would love to see him do something of a real telling of, I mean, but see, this is the thing I have with remakes or even sequels. I would love for them to, like I say, really take what they see in terms of what is there, and not just, okay, we're just trying to money grab something, I mean, because this is the thing I feel that most remakes do. They're just doing it to just grab money financially and everything, and that's what they're doing. They're not doing it for the art. They're not doing it for the storytelling. I wouldn't mind, but at the same time, I'm kind of dreading that, because it's usually you have some and as I say, sometimes they're hit and miss. They're hit and miss. I mean, and I keep mentioning Hollywood because there's such a remaking, rebranding. I'm just like, oh my God, I mean, can you just take something? And sometimes they do miss. I mean, sometimes they do hit with a remake, but frankly, I'll just say in the end, I mean, I don't want them to do it, but if they were to do it, please be,
Oh, you froze up again. There you are. Now you're back.
I gotta check my internet, man. This is weird. But you get what I'm saying, though. It's the simple fact that you're telling a compelling story. Some people may not care about kaijus at all. We know this. Some people will not. But the simple fact is that the end result is remakes are only as good as the people who actually make them. And if they're not in it for the storytelling, I say no. Don't make these films. Don't remake these films because I feel like you're not really trying to create
Yeah.
something of your own. You're just trying to, say, "Oh, I want to get my name in lights and everything. I want to be famous." Like, then, dude, fuck off. You're not trying to make something creative in that. You're just trying to bitch slap somebody and say that this is what I want to do. He's like, this is what I'm. This is who I am. I'm the next Steven Spielberg. I'm the sure Honda. That's an
Well,
asshole.
that's the thing. Like Honda, he didn't have a problem doing kaiju films. Like
Yeah,
that's amazing to me that it wasn't like they were making a gazillion dollars back then, and he still kept doing it. And so if Yamazaki kind of goes that direction, which I hope, because he's a very good director, obviously, or even Stileski, who's doing all the Wick stuff, like if you really are that passionate about a project, just keep going until it just runs out, like until you're done.
yeah,
But there's very few directors want to do that. Like I know they want to do different things, and I'm fine with that too, because not everything has to be based in one genre. But if Yamazaki makes a ton of money off Godzilla films and kaiju films, then just keep going with it because you can put some of that money to some of the other projects you want to do on the side. But it's nice to have directors that care about the characters and the stories and the action or whatever. So, uh, the MonsterVerse only unfortunately kind of falls because we're too busy throwing different directors at these things. And even though some of them care about the projects, there's no consistency with it. And so that's the only problem that I run into with that. But yeah, I mean, it would be great if another person comes along and hopefully Yamazaki's it, where he's just like, you know what? I did two Godzilla films. I'm really enjoying this. I think I'm going to tackle a reboot of Rodan or Mothra, and I'd love to see it. Love to see it. You know.
yeah. I mean, like certain directors, like Christopher Nolan. I mean, he took the Batman character and did something spectacular with the three films. I mean, yeah, the latter one was, it was kind of lackluster, but it still had potential. What it was. But the other two, very good, and it gave him the niche to create something of his own. I mean, because he was more of a independence director when he started out, but like I said, once he got into a little bigger movies and everything, it gave him that push to do like Inception, Interstellar, other
Yeah.
things. And that's what I love, knowing that these kind of directors put the effort, whatever their movies make before, put it into something that is a dream passion for them to do. And later on saying, this is what that is, it's not so much it's saying, oh, this is who I am, this is what I'm making. No, it's showing that they have that passion, that love for the cinema in doing it. I mean, Ryan Coogler does it very well. Some other directors do it pretty well. Now, hopefully they don't go the route of, and I'm going to say this now, some people might look at me and say, oh God, dude, why'd you have to bring that up? The last three Star Wars films, you had two different directors, and it's like, granted what you think about the films, they're not super bad, but at the same time, it's like, do y'all even know what line you're hanging on to? As far as you're on a cliff, it seems like you're about to fall off, you know. And the crazy thing is, the only film in that between those three films that actually had a really strong narrative in terms of what it was doing was a film that was directed by Garrett Edwards, which was Rogue One.
Yep.
Rogue One surprised the hell out of me.
Because he cares about the source material.
Yes.
And the funny thing is, the last three films, you had the freedom to do anything. But when you start to abandon like everything that made the first films special, how you became a Jedi, like it's Rey is not a problem as a character.
No.
The problem is you gave her powers that took Luke years to master. And so it just doesn't work like that. People don't find believability in it. I know it's all fiction, but the reality is in the Star Wars universe, you aren't going to believe that, oh, yeah, she's a female. She can automatically pick up on this stuff within
Yes.
2 hours. It's not going to happen.
Mhm.
And then, like, you throw in all this other stuff that just doesn't make any sense. And it's like, again, the Acolyte show. I didn't watch it, but I've heard a lot about it. I
Yeah.
love the concept of space witches. I think it's fucking amazing concept.
Yeah. I mean, it's,
But how they approached it with the backstory and then trying to disregard anything that came before that, it just doesn't work. People aren't going to buy into it. Like, it doesn't matter if you think you're being creative, you're destroying the thing that laid the foundation to it. And so nobody's going to buy into that shit. So Rogue One at least knew where the source material was and said, okay, we're going to build on that. We're going to give you these cool characters that are the ones that are the catalyst for how this happened.
and that's what works for it. I mean, you did have some additional characters, something that you never seen before in the previous, original run of the films. But that's okay because they added such a grandiose what you was looking before, and to know that it's going to carry on to the original, and it's like that's brilliant, and that's why I say, why couldn't they have touched ground with that when the other three, sequels had come out, and it just disappointed me, I mean, because and actually when I saw Force Awakens, I think I was just jazzed up because I've seen a new Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
it was good. But after the time, you realize, like, okay, now I'm becoming drowning in, and I'm even becoming overwhelmed, and I'm coming, just like fatigued by this.
Well, the only problem with Force Awakens, it was just too much of a carbon copy of A New Hope. That's all it was doing. It's just doing the same thing. Then they tried to get more original with The Last Jedi and so on, but then it's like they just were tearing up the story, and like they knew they were fucking up and they couldn't stop it. It was like a train wreck that you just couldn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's all a part of the Star Wars stuff. We'll have to talk about that one day because I have a lot to say on that too.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of more.
But I appreciate you taking the time to talk a little bit about Gaira here. And why don't you let the people know what you got coming up on your channel?
Coming up, I have, and it's coming up this Saturday, which I'm going to be talking about the 50th anniversary of a legendary shark that has a name of Bruce, which, believe it or not, that's the name of my brother, Jaws, And like I say, that's going to be pretty much a turnaround with some people talking about and kind of breaking down why this shark has been around so long, why it's been so entertaining and stuff like that. And after the next following Saturday, I will be talking about Life Force, which is, I think, doesn't get enough kudos in terms of, films, because this is, we already know what the film is about. We know what it deals with and who's in it, but I think it needs to be talked about. And also, that will be my birthday podcast also, because I'm turning
birthday boy.
Yes, right. That double nickel, baby. So yes. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, for me, obviously, later tonight, be getting together with Olvin to do our Silver Screen Savants. We were supposed to do it tomorrow, but obviously I'm tied up with going to a concert with my Neko. And but tonight we'll be doing my pick, which is For Your Eyes Only. We're hitting the Bond again, Roger Moore. So it'll be fun talking about that. Sunday, I'll be getting together with Kevin Lambert and people to talk the Karate Kid special for a retro movie show. We're going to talk about the first 4 films. Then the following the week, I got Ghouls of Midnight. I haven't picked my picks up for that yet, but I'll let people know when we're all set there with that. But as Jedi announced the Life Force panel, I'm going to be there for that because I do want to talk about that film. It is very underrated. Then for Silver Screens that night, we're actually going to take a break from our picks, and we're going to interview Bobby, who's directing an upcoming film. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but he just did Grandma from 2024, which is a really cool horror film, which I want to check out. But we're going to talk about his upcoming film, some of his past projects, get to know him a little bit. So that'd be fun. That's our first interview on silver screens that we're going to be doing. So it'd be cool to sit down with him and talk about that. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I've got coming in the immediate future. But I'll keep people updated as I get more and more stuff that I'm going to be putting out, trailer reactions or whatever. But as always, Jedi, thank you for joining me, sir. It's been a pleasure to have you here. As for the rest of you, please go like and subscribe to the Jedi Velle Productions YouTube channel. A lot of good stuff already. He's starting to kick off his reviews and his opinions, and even if his opinions are wrong, just go check out.
Right.
Like and subscribe to the Melatonin podcast if you want. If not, that's okay. Fuck you anyway.
Exactly.
But leave us your comments. How do you feel about this particular kaiju? Do you like War of the Gargantuas? Would you like to see more of them? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time on the Melatonin podcast.
Yes, sir.